The millionaire invited the black nanny as a joke. But when she walked in like a goddess, everyone was left in absolute shock. And when they found out who she really was, his world came crashing down. Alexander Rothwell thought he was about to witness the most entertaining public humiliation of his life. What he didn't know was that he was actually walking into his own funeral. The crystal chandeliers in Manhattan's most exclusive penthouse ballroom cast golden light across 200 of America's wealthiest faces, all gathered to watch what they thought would be harmless fun. But Diana Washington had other plans. Deadly plans. As she descended the marble staircase in a gown worth more than most people's cars, the laughter that erupted wasn't celebration. It was the cruel, vicious mockery of predators who thought they'd cornered helpless prey. They had no idea they were staring at the most dangerous woman in New York. "Look what crawled out of the servants' quarters," Alexander whispered to his billionaire friends, champagne glass raised like a weapon. "Our sweet little nanny thinks she's Cinderella tonight." For 4 years, Diana had been invisible in this penthouse. 4 years of watching Alexander treat his children like accessories and his wife like property. 4 years of cleaning up after people who wouldn't spit on her if she was on fire. But tonight was payback time. The invitation had arrived like a death sentence 5 days earlier. Alexander slid the gold envelope across the marble counter while Diana prepared breakfast for his spoiled children, his eyes gleaming with malicious anticipation. "Charity gala Saturday night," he announced, voice dripping with fake generosity. "Black tie required. I'm sure you have something appropriate hanging in your little closet." Catherine Rothwell giggled behind her morning newspaper like a hyena scenting blood. They both knew exactly what they were doing, setting up Diana for the kind of public destruction that would leave her broken and unemployed. But here's what made Alexander's plan so beautifully, catastrophically stupid. He had invited every social media influencer, every gossip blogger, every news camera in Manhattan to witness what he called a teaching moment about social boundaries. He wanted maximum exposure for Diana's humiliation. He was about to get exactly that, just not the way he expected. 500,000 says she chickens out, Alexander bet his wife the night before, while Diana put his youngest son to bed just down the hall. "If she shows up, we'll have entertainment for hours before she runs crying back to whatever hole she crawled out of." Catherine's laugh was pure poison. "You're deliciously evil, darling. She'll probably show up in some discount store nightmare and realize she's completely out of her league. I give her 10 minutes before she disappears forever." What these monsters didn't know was that Diana Washington carried 3 secrets that would obliterate their perfect little world. First, she'd attended galas like this since childhood, long before poverty forced her into their service. Second, she had evidence that could send Alexander to prison for life. Third, she wasn't Diana Washington at all. As Diana glided through the ballroom, every step was calculated warfare. Her posture was regal, her expression serene, like a queen surveying subjects who had no idea they were about to be executed. The way she moved, the way she held her head, the way she commanded space, it was all wrong for a nanny. All wrong for someone who was supposed to be beneath them. "Jesus Christ, she actually came," Senator Patricia Walsh hissed to the oil heiress beside her. "And that dress. Where the hell did someone like her get couture? Probably maxed out credit cards she'll never pay off," Vivian Blackstone snarled, but her voice shook slightly. Something about Diana's confidence was making her nervous. This is going to be absolutely painful to watch. What they didn't realize was that Diana hadn't bought, borrowed, or stolen anything. The gown belonged to her, had always belonged to her, just like everything else in this penthouse should have. Alexander strutted toward her like a peacock, surrounded by his pack of billionaire wolves. Cameras flashed as society reporters positioned themselves for the kill shot. This was going to be legendary humiliation, the kind that would trend on social media for weeks. "Diana, what an interesting surprise," Alexander announced, voice loud enough to stop nearby conversations. "I wasn't entirely certain someone like you would have the courage to accept our invitation." The phrase "someone like you" hung in the air like a knife waiting to drop. "Someone like me?" Diana repeated, her voice cutting through the noise like a blade through silk. But there was something in her tone that made Alexander's smile falter for just a fraction of a second. Something that didn't belong in the voice of a servant. For one terrifying moment, Alexander felt like prey instead of predator. There was authority in Diana's voice, power that she'd kept hidden for 4 years. But his arrogance crushed the feeling immediately. If you're enjoying this story, kindly do us a favor and subscribe to our channel. It is free and won't cost anything, but it means the world to us. We are just a small channel trying to grow. And do not forget to comment where you're watching from. Thank you, and back to our video. Well, naturally, someone from your background, Alexander continued, feeding off the crowd's anticipation. You must feel completely overwhelmed by all this sophistication. Diana's smile was beautiful and absolutely terrifying. Overwhelmed? She asked softly, her eyes locking onto Alexander's with laser intensity. No, Alexander. I feel like I'm finally home. The silence that crashed over the immediate area was deafening. Something was very, very wrong. Nannies don't talk like that. Servants don't look like that. And they definitely don't make billionaires unconsciously step backward in fear. Well, I hope you enjoy yourself, Alexander said, trying to regain control but failing miserably. I'm sure tonight will be quite educational. Diana's gaze swept across the assembled crowd like a general surveying a battlefield. Oh, Alexander, she said with deadly calm. I guarantee tonight will be educational for everyone here. If you think this story is explosive so far, you have no idea what's coming next, because what Diana was about to reveal would destroy not just Alexander, but every person who had ever underestimated her. Alexander thought he was winning. He was about to discover he'd been playing checkers while Diana was playing chess, and she was already 10 moves ahead. Ladies and gentlemen, Alexander called out, tapping his platinum spoon against crystal like a death knell. I want you all to meet our very special guest tonight, Diana, the wonderful nanny who's been so devoted to our family. The laughter that erupted was vicious, predatory. Phone cameras flashed like lightning as Manhattan's elite prepared to document the destruction of someone they considered beneath them. But Diana stood in the center of it all like a statue, unmoved, unbroken. Alexander, Catherine whispered with fake concern, loud enough for others to hear. Isn't this a bit cruel, even for you? Cruel. Alexander's laugh was pure arrogance. I'm giving her the opportunity of several lifetimes. When else would someone from her world ever experience our world? But Diana wasn't breaking. She wasn't running. She wasn't even sweating. Instead, she stood there with the kind of calm that comes from someone who's about to detonate a nuclear bomb. Senator Patricia Walsh glided over with her pack of political wives, all wearing expressions of surgical cruelty. Diana, sweetie, we're all just dying to know. How long did it take you to find that gorgeous gown? Shopping must have been quite the adventure on your salary. Actually, Diana replied with a composure that made Patricia's confidence crack slightly. This gown has incredible sentimental value. It belonged to my mother. Her mother. Vivian Blackstone cackled like a witch. How precious. And where exactly did Mommy shop for designer gowns? The Salvation Army's premium collection. Diana's smile turned predatory. The kind of smile sharks make before they attack. My mother wore this gown the last time she attended a charity gala in this exact ballroom. That was 18 years ago, when she was still Diana Washington Rothwell. The name hit the crowd like a physical blow. Conversations stopped mid-sentence. Glasses paused halfway to lips. The very air seemed to freeze as the impossible implications sank in. Alexander, who had been basking in his moment of triumph, turned slowly toward Diana. The color was draining from his face like water from a broken dam. What did you just say? Washington Rothwell, Diana repeated, each syllable a nail in Alexander's coffin. Funny how some people develop convenient amnesia when it comes to family history. Alexander's world was tilting. His perfect evening was becoming a nightmare in real time. You're insane, he stammered, but his voice cracked like a teenager's. I don't know what delusion you're living in, but this isn't delusion, Alexander, Diana interrupted, taking a step toward him that made him instinctively back away. "This is family history. Our family history. The history you've spent 18 years desperately trying to erase." The phones were still recording, but now for completely different reasons. Whispers were spreading through the crowd like wildfire. The Rothwell name being connected to a black nanny was impossible. Wasn't it? Catherine grabbed Alexander's arm with white knuckles. "What is she talking about? Alexander, what does she mean? She's lying," Alexander shouted, but sweat was beading on his forehead. "She's a deranged employee trying to." Diana reached into her purse and pulled out something that made the nearby crowd gasp audibly. It was a ring, but not just any ring. It was the ring. The Rothwell family signet ring with its distinctive blue diamond that had been featured in Vanity Fair articles about America's oldest fortunes. "This ring," Diana announced, holding it high like a weapon, "was placed on my mother's finger by Charles Rothwell, my father, the man you told the world died without legitimate heirs." Alexander looked like he was having a heart attack. His billionaire friends were stepping away from him like he had the plague. The society reporters were moving closer, smelling blood in the water. "Where did you steal that?" Alexander screamed, his composure completely shattered. "That's family property. You have no right." "Steal." Diana's laugh was terrifying. "Alexander, you can't steal what belongs to you by birthright." Patricia Walsh was staring with her mouth hanging open. "My God," she whispered to her companion. "Do you think she's actually telling the truth?" "Impossible," Catherine breathed, but her voice had no conviction left. "Alexander would have told me if there was a." Diana heard every whisper, saw every shocked face, and felt 18 years of rage finally finding its target. "Sister?" she asked with deadly calm. "Oh, Catherine, I'm not Alexander's sister." The entire ballroom held its breath. 200 of America's most powerful people waited for the bomb to drop. "I'm his daughter." The explosion of gasps, shrieks, and confused shouts was immediate. Alexander looked like he'd been struck by lightning. Phone cameras swiveled toward him like weapons. This wasn't just family drama. This was a scandal that would destroy lives and end careers. "You're insane," Alexander roared, but his voice was pure panic now. "My father would never. This is complete fabrication. Charles Rothwell had an affair with my mother for 6 years." Diana continued relentlessly, her voice cutting through his hysteria like a sword. "Rebecca Washington was the family's private art consultant. When she became pregnant with me, your father promised to take care of us both. And he did until the day he died." Catherine was staring between them like she was watching her entire world collapse in real time. "You," Diana said, pointing at Alexander with the force of 18 years of hatred, "decided we were inconvenient. You cut off our support, sold the home your father bought for my mother, and threw us into poverty like we were garbage." "I had no obligation," Alexander started desperately. "No obligation?" Diana's voice rose for the first time, carrying across the entire ballroom. "You had no obligation to your father's family?" Interesting morality from someone who inherited 100% of a fortune that should have been split between his children. The crowd was backing away from Alexander like he was radioactive. Political careers were ending in real time as people realized they'd been photographed laughing at his victim. "Prove it," Alexander said with the desperation of a drowning man. "Anyone can make up stories and wave around jewelry." Diana's expression became absolutely predatory. "Oh, Alexander, do you really think I came here tonight without bulletproof evidence?" She lifted her phone and gestured toward the entrance. The 3 people who walked in at that moment would finish destroying what was left of Alexander's world. "You can come in now." The 3 people who entered that ballroom carried with them the power to obliterate lives. And they were about to use every bit of it. Jennifer Martinez led the way, Manhattan's most feared investigative journalist. The woman who had destroyed senators and toppled CEOs with nothing but truth and determination. Behind her walked Robert Chun, the inheritance attorney whose cases had redistributed hundreds of millions in stolen wealth. But the third person made Alexander Rothwell collapse against the wall like he'd been shot. Dr. Hamilton, Catherine whispered in horror, recognizing their longtime family physician. What are you doing here? Dr. Hamilton had aged 20 years in the past month. His hands shook as he walked to the center of the ballroom, but his voice was rock steady. 18 years ago, Alexander Rothwell forced me to commit medical fraud. I falsified death certificates and autopsy reports. Charles Rothwell was murdered. The ballroom erupted in screams. Women clutched their pearls. Men dropped their drinks. And every phone in the room swiveled toward Alexander like accusatory fingers. Jennifer Martinez raised her hand for silence. Keep recording, everyone. This is an official confession being documented for federal prosecutors. Alexander was hyperventilating, sweat pouring down his face like rain. You're all insane. My father died of natural causes. Everyone knows that. Your father discovered you'd been embezzling from family trusts and charitable foundations for years. Dr. Hamilton continued without mercy. He changed his will to include Diana as a full heir and was preparing to report your crimes to the FBI when he started showing symptoms of oleander poisoning. Diana stood frozen, tears of vindication streaming down her face. 18 years. 18 years of poverty, humiliation, and believing she was worthless. Finally, someone was telling the truth. Robert Chun opened his briefcase like he was unveiling a doomsday weapon. 3 weeks ago, we obtained federal court orders to exhume Charles Rothwell's remains. Independent toxicology confirmed lethal levels of oleander alkaloids in his bone tissue. You're all lying, Alexander screamed, his voice breaking like glass. This is a conspiracy. You're trying to steal my inheritance. Jennifer Martinez stepped forward with a tablet that might as well have been a death sentence. Mr. Rothwell, I have digital recordings of 9 conversations between you and Dr. Hamilton from 2005 and 2006. Conversations where you explicitly threatened to destroy his medical license if he revealed how your father really died. Diana finally spoke, her voice slicing through the chaos like a blade dipped in poison. Alexander, you didn't just murder our father. You stole 18 years of my life while you lived on blood money. I never killed anyone. Alexander was pointing frantically at everyone, his expensive tuxedo soaked with terror sweat. They're all lying. This is extortion. Then explain this, Diana said, connecting her phone to the ballroom's audio system. The recording that played through those speakers was Alexander's voice, crystal clear and absolutely damning. Hamilton, you will keep your mouth shut about anything unusual in the old man's blood work, or I will end your career. I will destroy you so completely that you'll never practice medicine again. And as for that black whore and her bastard daughter, they mean nothing to me. Let them starve. The silence that followed was the sound of a life ending. Even Alexander's most loyal friends were backing away from him like he carried the plague. Catherine was staring at her husband with absolute horror and revulsion. 18 years. Diana screamed, her composure finally shattering. 18 years of scrubbing toilets and raising other people's children while you spent my inheritance on yachts and mansions. She took a breath and regained her deadly calm, which was somehow more terrifying than her rage. You want to know how I got this evidence? I didn't stumble into your employment by accident, Alexander. I researched you, targeted you, and spent 4 years collecting proof of every crime you've ever committed. Alexander tried one last desperate gambit. Even if any of this insanity were true, the inheritance was distributed years ago. There's nothing you can do. Robert Chen's smile was colder than Arctic wind. Actually, Mr. Rothwell, murder nullifies all asset distributions. Charles Rothwell's estate must be redistributed according to his actual final will. The one he signed 3 days before you killed him. Diana approached Alexander, who had slumped against the wall like a broken puppet. Do you know what my biggest mistake was, Alexander? I kept believing you might develop a conscience. I thought maybe, just maybe, you'd remember that we're family. Please, Alexander whispered. His arrogance completely evaporated. Catherine, the children. This will destroy everything. You destroyed your family the moment you chose murder over love. Diana replied with finality that felt like a gravestone slamming shut. Police sirens were wailing outside, growing closer by the second. Alexander looked around desperately, but every face showed either disgust or terror. His golden circle had become his jury, and they'd already reached their verdict. As handcuffs clicked around Alexander's wrists, Diana walked to the terrace overlooking Central Park. Below, news vans were gathering like vultures, and reporters were already broadcasting the scandal that would dominate headlines for months. Catherine approached with tears streaming down her face. "Diana, I swear on my children's lives, I knew nothing about any of this." "I know," Diana said gently. "You were his victim too, Catherine. What happens to us now? To my children?" Diana looked out at the city lights twinkling like stars. "Now justice gets served, and maybe Manhattan learns that true power comes from truth, not money." 6 months later, Diana Washington Rothwell sat in Alexander's former office, completely transformed. Where trophies of greed once stood, certificates from children's charities now hung. Where photos of yachts and mansions once decorated walls, pictures of scholarship recipients now smiled back. Alexander had been sentenced to life without parole for first-degree murder, inheritance fraud, embezzlement, and tax evasion. Every penny of his stolen fortune, over $60 million, had been redistributed to his victims. "Miss Rothwell," said Maria, her executive assistant who had once cleaned these same offices, "the Today Show is here for your interview about the Foundation's first year." Diana smiled. In 6 months, she transformed Rothwell Enterprises into the Rothwell Children's Foundation, the most powerful child advocacy organization on the East Coast. Fair wages, protection services, and educational programs had replaced the culture of exploitation Alexander had created. When the Today Show host asked about critics calling her revenge excessive, Diana's response was perfect. "Revenge would have been doing to him what he did to me. Justice is making sure he pays for his crimes while using his stolen wealth to protect children. There's a universe of difference. What would you tell others facing similar injustices?" Diana looked out at children playing in the Foundation's playground, children who now had hope because of her fight. "The most devastating revenge isn't destroying your enemies. It's building something so beautiful and powerful that their cruelty becomes just the opening chapter of your victory story." That evening, Diana returned to a house filled with laughter. She'd adopted 4 children who, like her, had needed someone to believe in their worth. Alexander had tried to humiliate a nanny and discovered he'd awakened a queen. More importantly, he learned that dignity can never be purchased, inherited, or stolen. It can only be earned through the choices we make when we think nobody's watching. If this story of ultimate justice moved you, subscribe for more stories proving that good always triumphs when you have the right strategy. And remember that sometimes the most dangerous person in any room is the one everyone chooses to ignore.